Grand Marshal Thexian of the Vraxian Supremacy drummed his 6 claws against the obsidian command table, each tap echoing through the war chamber like a death knell. Around him, 200 of the finest military minds in 4 spiral arms waited in respectful silence. Well, he thought with barely concealed satisfaction, this would be the easiest conquest briefing in his illustrious career. Honored commanders, Thexian began, his voice carrying the weight of 300 victories across 2 centuries of service. We gather today to discuss Operation Silent Claim, the annexation of what our intelligence division has designated Sector 937 Gamma. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a modest yellow star surrounded by 8 planets and an impressive asteroid belt. Nothing remarkable, nothing threatening, just another system ripe for the taking. As you can see, Thexian continued, gesturing at the 3rd planet from the star. The primary target shows signs of advanced industrialization. Atmospheric composition suggests a thriving biosphere. Orbital infrastructure indicates technological sophistication roughly equivalent to early FTL civilizations. And the natives, sir? Asked Commander Zelix, a young officer eager to prove herself in her first major campaign. Ah, yes, the natives. Thexian's mandibles clicked in what passed for a Vraxian smile. That's where this gets interesting. Intelligence suggests they call themselves humans. A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembled commanders. Several exchanged glances. A few made gestures meant to ward off bad luck. Marshal, came a gruff voice from the back. Senior Tactician Corvin, a scarred veteran of the Outer Rim Wars, pushed forward through the crowd. With respect, sir, I've heard stories about. Stories. Thexian interrupted, his tone sharp enough to cut hull plating. Yes, Corvin, we've all heard the stories. Traders' tales whispered in station cantinas. Merchant legends about the death worlders from the edge of explored space. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the chamber. For 270 years, these stories have circulated. Death worlders who evolved on a planet so hostile that merely existing constituted advanced combat training. Apex predators who supposedly conquered their own world before reaching the stars. Warriors so formidable that entire species fled rather than face them in battle. The assembled commanders erupted in laughter. Scales rattled against carapaces. Breathing apparatus wheezed in amusement. Even Corvin's scarred face cracked into what might have been a grin. And yet, Thexian continued, his voice rising above the din. In all that time, 270 years, not one confirmed contact, not one trade agreement, not one diplomatic transmission, not one piece of verifiable evidence that these terrifying humans actually exist. The laughter intensified. Someone in the back made a joke about checking under sleeping pods for humans. Another suggested hiring them as bedtime story villains for hatchlings. Only Corvin remained silent, his multiple eyes fixed on the reconnaissance data, scrolling across his personal console. Marshal. He tried again. The probe data shows unusual defensive. Unusual for a pre-contact civilization, perhaps, Thexian said dismissively, but hardly unusual for automated mining operations or weather control satellites. Corvin, you're seeing patterns because you want to see patterns. It's called confirmation bias. We covered it at the academy. Sir, I attended the same academy, Corvin replied, his voice careful but firm. And we also learned that absence of evidence is not. Evidence of absence. Yes, yes. Thexian waved a claw dismissively. I know the axiom, but consider the alternative. If these humans existed, if they possessed even a fraction of the capabilities attributed to them in bar tales and cargo hauler gossip, why haven't they expanded? Why haven't they contacted us? Why haven't they done anything in 270 years? Silence fell across the war chamber. It was a fair question, one that had puzzled xenobiologists and strategic analysts for generations. I'll tell you why, Thexian said, lowering his voice to a theatrical whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the massive room. Because they don't exist. This entire system is probably abandoned precursor technology, or rogue, terraforming gone autonomous. Either way, he activated the tactical display with a dramatic flourish. 5,000 warships appeared, arranged in perfect attack formation like a constellation of death. In 96 hours, it becomes ours. The room exploded in approval. Roars, cheers, and various species-specific sounds of enthusiasm echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Only Corvin and a handful of other veterans remained quiet, studying their data with increasingly furrowed brows. Fleet disposition is as follows. The Thexian continued, clearly enjoying himself now. Battle Group Crimson will establish orbital dominance over the third planet. Battle Group Sapphire will secure the asteroid mining operations. Battle Group Obsidian will neutralize any automated defenses. Battle Group Amber will... Marshal, interrupted Intelligence Officer Serix, a methodical Chewian known for her analytical precision. We should discuss the probe we sent 4 days ago. What about it? It hasn't reported back, sir. Standard protocol would suggest I'm tired of hearing objections to what should be the easiest conquest in Supremacy history. The Thexian snapped, his patience evaporating like atmosphere from a breached hull. One probe fails to check in, and suddenly everyone's jumping at shadows. It probably hit a micrometeorite, or got caught in a gravity well. These things happen. But they didn't happen. Not to military-grade reconnaissance drones equipped with redundant communication systems and shields rated for stellar corona transits. Serix kept this observation to herself, however, merely dipping her head in acknowledgement. Commanders, prepare your vessels, the Thexian ordered, his tone shifting to formal military cadence. We jump in 84 hours. Navigation coordinates are being uploaded to your tactical systems now. Questions? Rules of engagement, sir? Asked Colonel Vran, a reptilian commander of the assault divisions. Minimal resistance expected. The Thexian replied with a predatory grin. Anything that moves and isn't ours, neutralize it. Anything valuable, secure it. Anything that looks like a weapon, destroy it. Keep it simple. As the commanders filed out, discussing logistics and placing bets on which battle group would claim the most territory, Corvin approached Serix near the exit. You saw the data, too, he said quietly, ensuring no one was listening. I did, Serix confirmed, her multiple eyes scanning their surroundings. Those orbital platforms aren't automated. The positioning is too adaptive. The coverage patterns are too sophisticated. Someone designed that defensive grid. Someone's home, Corvin agreed. Someone's definitely home. And they've been very quiet, Serix added, while watching us gather our fleet for the past 6 days. Should we press the issue? Go directly to the Marshal? Serix's skin rippled with frustration, a Chewian expression of helplessness. We follow orders, tactician. We prepare our crews, and we hope that 270 years of stories exaggerated the threat. Corvin looked back at the now-empty war chamber where the holographic display still showed 5,000 ships ready to prove that humans were nothing but space or folklore. And if the stories got it right? He asked quietly. Serix was silent for a long moment. Then, tactician, we're about to provide the galaxy with a very expensive lesson about the difference between absence of evidence and evidence of absence. They walked toward their respective commands, neither voicing the thought that occurred to both simultaneously. In the entire known galaxy, no major civilization had ever remained completely silent for 270 years without a very good reason. Above Earth, in the cold black between the stars and the moon, sensors tracked every move the Vraxian fleet made. Patient, calculating, waiting. The humans had always been there. They'd simply been learning, watching, preparing, and now, as Grand Marshal Thexian so eagerly anticipated, it was almost time to prove something, just not what he expected. The Vraxian Supremacy Armada materialized at the edge of the Sol system in a display of military precision that would have made any tactical academy weep with pride. 5,000 warships, each bristling with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was, Grand Marshal Thexian thought smugly, absolutely overwhelming. All ships reporting successful transition, Marshal, announced Navigation Officer Dressa, her voice steady despite this being her first major offensive operation. No anomalies detected. Formation holding at 99.8% efficiency. Excellent, Thexian purred, settling into a command throne like a satisfied predator. Begin system scan. Let's see what our mythical humans left behind when they failed to exist. The primary sensor array swept across the solar system. The results appeared on the main display. 8 planets, various moons, an impressive asteroid belt, and Thexian leaned forward, his satisfaction flickering. Tactical, he demanded, pointing at the cluster of contacts orbiting the third planet. What am I looking at? Lieutenant Vex, a young officer eager to prove himself, studied his console with increasing confusion. Sir, I'm reading 342 orbital platforms. Various sizes. Energy signatures are active but minimal. They don't appear to be charging weapons or raising shields. Because they're automated weather satellites or mining equipment, Thexian said, though his voice carried less certainty than before. Continue scan. What about the surface? Significant electromagnetic activity, sir. Radio waves, microwave transmissions. What appears to be a global communication network. Population centers on all major landmasses. Atmospheric composition is. Vex paused, double-checking his readings. Toxic, sir. 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, with trace pollutants. Corrosive to most known species without environmental suits. A death world, Corvin muttered from a station, just like the stories said. Thexian shot him a withering glare, just like half the backwater planets in the outer rim. Tactician, your point? Before Corvin could respond, Communications Officer THRYN suddenly straightened, her auditory membranes flaring. Marshal, incoming transmission. Audio only. Origin, the third planet. They're hailing us, sir. The war room fell silent. Every eye, sensor cluster, and optical receptor turned toward THRYN. They're hailing us, Thexian repeated slowly. The automated mining equipment is hailing us. Yes, sir, THRYN confirmed, her voice uncertain. Shall I put it through? Thexian considered for a moment, then gestured affirmatively. Why not? Let's hear what the machines have to say. Should be amusing. The speakers crackled to life, and a voice filled the war room. It was smooth, calm, and spoke in perfect galactic standard with an accent no one could quite place. Vraxian Armada, this is Admiral Sarachin of the United Earth Space Command. Welcome to the Sol System. We've been expecting you. The silence that followed could have suffocated a star. Expecting us? Thexian finally managed, his 3 hearts beating irregularly. Well, yes. The human voice continued, and was that amusement? You've had observation vessels parked just outside the heliopause for 8 days now. Not exactly subtle. We figured you'd either jump in or get bored and leave. Glad you chose a more interesting option. Officers exchanged glances across the war room. The humans had known. The entire time they'd known. This is Grand Marshal Thexian of the Vraxian Supremacy, representing the interests of the Galactic Sovereignty Council, Thexian said, recovering his composure with visible effort. Your system has been designated for incorporation into sovereignty territory. Surrender now, and your population will be processed according to standard relocation protocols. There was a pause, then something that sounded suspiciously like laughter. I'm sorry, Chin said, not sounding sorry at all. Did you just tell us to surrender before even attempting to take the system? That's adorable. Really, points for confidence, though. Thexian's skin flushed an angry crimson. You dare mock the sovereignty? We have 5,000 warships. Your pathetic orbital platforms don't even have their weapons charged. About that, Chin replied conversationally. Quick question, Marshal. How familiar are you with Earth's apex predators? What? I don't. Because, you see, there's this hunting technique many of our predators use. Big cats, crocodiles, snakes, they all do variations of it. They stay very, very still. They don't charge at their prey making noise and waving their claws around. They wait, patient, calm. They let the prey come to them. Let it get comfortable. Let it think there's no danger. The human pause for effect, and then they strike. Usually, the prey doesn't even know what hit them. Warning klaxons screamed across every ship in the fleet simultaneously. Tactical. Thexian roared. Report. Vex appendages flew across his console, his voice climbing several octaves. Sir, those orbital platforms, they're not platforms. They're ships. Capital-class vessels. Shields activating across the entire grid. Weapon signatures going hot. Energy readings are... Marshal, these readings are off every scale I have. How did we miss? You missed them because they were running cold. Chen's voice cut to the chaos like a blade. Minimal energy signatures, just like your scans showed. Funny thing about human engineering, Marshal, we got very good at making things look harmless until we needed them not to be. On the tactical display, the 342 platforms suddenly blazed alive like stars being born. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the additional contacts appearing on sensors. Ships uncloaking from the asteroid belt. Vessels rising from behind the moon. Defensive installations that have been masquerading as space debris suddenly revealing their true nature. A massive station appearing from behind Mars. Weapons ports open like the eyes of a waking giant. Total contact count, Vex whispered, his voice breaking. 7,214 combat vessels. All weapons hot. All shields at maximum. They're everywhere, sir. Thexian stared at the display, his mind refusing to process what his sensors were telling him. They'd walked into a trap. The prey had been the predator all along. How did we miss? You missed them because they were running cold. Chen's voice cut to the chaos like a blade. Minimal energy signatures, just like your scans showed. Funny thing about human engineering, Marshal, we got very good at making things look harmless until we needed them not to be. On the tactical display, the 342 platforms suddenly blazed alive like stars being born. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the additional contacts appearing on sensors. Ships uncloaking from the asteroid belt. Vessels rising from behind the moon. Defensive installations that have been masquerading as space debris suddenly revealing their true nature. A massive station appearing from behind Mars. Weapons ports open like the eyes of a waking giant. Total contact count, Vex whispered, his voice breaking. 7,214 combat vessels. All weapons hot. All shields at maximum. They're everywhere, sir. Thexian stared at the display, his mind refusing to process what his sensors were telling him. They'd walked into a trap. The prey had been the predator all along. Impossible, he breathed. You're a myth. A story. You don't have the infrastructure for her. For what? Chen sounded genuinely curious now. Building ships? Marshal, we've been building ships since before your species discovered fire. We've been fighting wars since before you had warp drive. We've been surviving on a planet that actively tries to kill us every single day with weather, predators, diseases, and natural disasters that would terrify your worst nightmares. She paused. And you thought what? That we just roll over because you showed up with some fancy formation and a superiority complex. Corvin was already running probability calculations. The numbers were horrifying. Marshal, we need to retreat. Now, the tactical situation is completely under our control, Chen interrupted, somehow hearing their internal communications. Oh, that's right. We've been monitoring your transmissions since you entered the system. Another fun Earth invention, signals intelligence. You really should encrypt better. Thexian command throne suddenly felt like a trap closing around him. What do you want? Now there's a smart question, Chen acknowledged. Here's what's going to happen, Marshal. You're going to turn your fleet around. You're going to jump back to sovereignty space. And you're going to deliver a message for us. What message? That humans aren't a myth, Chen said, her voice hardening like steel being forged. We're real. We're here. We've been watching your sovereignty stumble around the galaxy for 270 years, claiming systems like they're picking fruit, and we're done staying quiet. You're declaring war on the sovereignty? Thexian asked, disbelief warring with terror. War. Chun laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, Marshal, we're declaring our existence. What the sovereignty does with that information is entirely up to you. She paused. But here's some free advice. The next fleet that shows up uninvited won't get a warning. They'll just get a demonstration of what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. The weapon locks on every human vessel intensified, targeting solutions painting every Vraxian ship simultaneously. 7,000 targeting lasers, creating a web of death in the darkness. You have 15 minutes to begin your jump sequence, Chen continued, her voice calm and professional. After that, we'll assume you're looking for that demonstration. Your choice, Marshal. Thexian looked around his war room at the faces of his commanders. Every single one wore the same expression. Barely controlled panic mixed with professional assessment of an utterly hopeless tactical situation. They were outnumbered, outgunned, outmaneuvered, out everything, by a species that supposedly didn't exist. Navigation, he said quietly, his pride crumbling like a sand castle in a tsunami. Prepare for emergency jump. All ships. Wise choice, Marshal, Chen said approvingly. Oh, and one more thing. Tell the sovereignty that Earth remembers everyone who tried to claim us. We've got long memories and an even longer reach. So maybe next time, try knocking first. We're actually quite friendly when people are polite. The transmission ended with a click that sounded like a door closing on 270 years of comfortable assumptions. As the Vraxian armada began its hasty retreat, sensors detected something that would haunt Thexian's nightmares for years to come. The human ships weren't even pursuing. They just watched, patient and calm, as the greatest military force in 4 spiral arms fled from a species that supposedly didn't exist. On Earth, in a command center buried 5 kilometers beneath the Himalayas, Admiral Sarachin leaned back in her chair and allowed herself a small smile. Think they'll get the message, Admiral? Asked General Rodriguez, her tactical officer. Oh, they'll get it, Chen replied. The question is whether the sovereignty is smart enough to listen. And if they're not, Chen's smile faded, replaced by something colder and infinitely more dangerous. Then they'll learn the same lesson every predator on Earth eventually figures out. We didn't climb to the top of our food chain by being the strongest or the fastest or the biggest. She stood, walking to the observation window that looked out over the command center. Hundreds of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the defense network that spanned the entire solar system. We got there by being the most persistent, the most adaptable, the most creative, and when necessary, she turned back to Rodriguez, her eyes hard, the most terrifying. Grand Marshal Thexian stood before the Sovereignty Council, 300 of the most powerful beings in 4 spiral arms, and tried to explain how he'd lost 5,000 ships without firing a single shot. Let me understand this correctly, High Counselor Vrash said, his voice dripping with contempt. You encountered a civilization we believed to be mythical. They revealed a fleet that outnumbered yours, and you retreated. It was a tactical withdrawal, Counselor, Thexian said, though the words tasted like ash. The humans had prepared a defensive position that would have resulted in catastrophic losses had we... The humans? Vrash interrupted. You're telling us that bar tales and cargo hauler gossip were accurate? More than accurate, Counselor. The humans have been in that system for thousands of years. They've been watching us, learning our tactics, studying our technology, and they've built a military force specifically designed to counter our capabilities. Impossible, another counselor scoffed. No species could remain hidden for 270 years while building such a force. They weren't hidden. Corvin spoke up from his position as Thexian's advisor. They were waiting. There's a difference. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some counselors demanded immediate retaliation. Others suggested diplomacy. A few even proposed leaving the humans alone entirely. Order, Vrash commanded. Thexian, what is your professional assessment? Can we defeat them? Thexian was quiet for a long moment. He thought about those 7,000 ships appearing like ghosts from the dark. He thought about the calm certainty in Admiral Chen's voice. He thought about a species that had turned patience into a weapon. Counselor, he finally said, I've fought in 300 battles across 2 centuries. I've conquered 12 civilizations. I've never retreated from a fight. He paused. But I've also never faced an enemy that seemed genuinely amused by our threats. The humans weren't afraid of us, Counselor. They were entertained, like they were teaching unruly children a lesson. So your answer is? My answer is that we should do exactly what Admiral Chen suggested. Thexian said firmly, next time we knock first. Above Earth, the silent vigil continued. 7,000 ships patrolling the Sol system, watching the stars, waiting to see if the galaxy had learned its lesson. In the command center, Admiral Chun reviewed reports from intelligence assets scattered across known space. The story was spreading. The Vraxian retreat had been witnessed by merchant vessels, trading stations, and independent systems. The myth had become reality, and reality, as the Vraxian Supremacy had just discovered, had teeth. "Admiral," Rodriguez said, looking up from her console, "we're detecting increased diplomatic chatter. Multiple civilizations are requesting formal contact. Some are offering trade agreements. Some are proposing defensive pacts. And some," Chen asked, "some are trying to figure out exactly how strong we are before they decide whether to be friends or enemies." Chen smiled. "Let them wonder. Uncertainty is its own kind of power." She looked out at the command center, at the culmination of 300 years of careful preparation. 300 years of watching, learning, and building in silence. "You know what the funny thing is?" Chen said. "We were never hiding from them. We just didn't see the point in announcing ourselves until we were ready." "And now?" Rodriguez asked. "Now," Chen said, "they know we exist. They know we're powerful. And they know we're watching them just as closely as they're watching us." She turned back to the window overlooking Earth, the blue marble that had birthed a species tough enough to survive anything the universe could throw at them. "And that, General, is exactly where we want to be." Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the fact that the galactic balance of power had just shifted forever. The myth had become reality. The silence had ended, and the galaxy would never be quite as comfortable again, because somewhere out there in the dark between the stars, humans were watching, always watching, waiting for the next species that mistook patience for weakness, ready to teach them the same lesson predators, throughout Earth's history, had learned the hard way. Never, ever underestimate the prey that's smiling at you.